Welcome back, everybody, to the 6th episode of the GCN Cyclocross podcast. I'm Jeremy Powers, and as always, it is a pleasure to welcome you all to the show. We got a big one for you this week. I got to catch up with my friend Marty McDonald about all the racing that's been going down overseas, as we do. We talk about the young British rider Thomas Mayne, who's an under 23 from the United Kingdom and won his first World Cup in Tabor 2 weeks ago. We also talk about Celine Del Carmen Alvarado's first win in Coxside, and of course, Mathieu Van Der Poel's dominance and the way that he tore it up in Coxside over the weekend. Then I get to catch up with Erwin Vervecken. He's back for the Top Vervecka segment. We do a mid-season review of all the big names, the young women who are smashing it in the elite races, attendance numbers, viewing figures, and a bunch of other fun Erwin-type stuff. Our featured guest in the show today is the current Belgian national champ, Toon Aerts, and the conversation was awesome. He tells us all about how he got into the sport, his family, racing with his brother Thijs Aerts, working closely with Sven Nys, his favorite way to train, and lots of other great stuff. This is the 6th episode of the podcast, and I feel like we're really hitting our stride over here at GCN. It's been a pleasure putting these together for all of you with the GCN crew, and I thank you all for listening. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Get involved with us. Leave us a review. It would mean the world to me if you did. If you're on social media, at GCN Tweet on Twitter, at Global Cycling Network on Instagram. Let's get into this one with my friend, Marty McDonald. Hey, Marty, how are you today?
I'm good, my friend. How about yourself?
Dude, I'm doing awesome. The sun is shining here in Massachusetts, and it is a beautiful day. What is going on over in the UK?
Well, last weekend we had the penultimate round of our National Trophy Series in Pembury Country Park in Carmarthenshire. And yeah, loads more Dutch and Belgian riders coming over and racing that one. We had a victory for Arnie Vrachten. He's with the Ekrog Paushausen under-23 team. Great to see so many Belgians and Dutch riders coming over. There's more and more. You can see how much the British cyclocross scene is growing with how many riders are racing internationally. So I think it's tempting those riders to just come across the pond. It's as easy for them to come to the UK as it is for the UK riders to go to Belgium and the Netherlands. So it really sort of gives me a lot of pride in a way to see that the riders from the hotbed of cyclocross are coming over to the UK and racing.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds like it's been good racing. You guys have had a ton of success with riders coming out of the a little hotbed. And you were telling me that there's an area of the UK that seems to be turning out quite a bit of talent.
Yeah, we got to give a big shout out the Northeast Cyclocross Massive, who are always on our chat forums, on our live coverage. But Anna Kay, Thomas Mayne, they're both from that area, and they're two of the biggest names up and coming at the moment. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah, we were able to actually catch up with the rider Thomas Mayne, and for all of those who don't know who Thomas is, he's a young rider from the UK who recently won the Tabor World Cup, was 4th place in Beringen with the elites, and has been having an absolute tear. So we actually have an interview with him that I got last week, just before he did Coxside this weekend, but after Tabor, to hear about his win. Let's hop into that. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We've been talking a lot about you over the last couple of weeks, especially with that 4th place ride in Beringen with the pros. Let's start there, man. How was that? How did that feel?
Special. It was like my first major result in an elite race. I never really expected it either, with the amount of riders that were in that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, we were watching the race coverage, we were seeing everything that was coming back from that, and like you were in there with like Toon Aerts. I mean, there's a lot of pictures of you with Toon Aerts. It had to be a little bit of a shell shock moment for you, because I mean, you've done well. You've had a lot of great results so far this year already, but definitely this felt like, at least from where we sit, it was a breakthrough ride for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, having Toon Aerts on my wheel and not coming past it never normally happens. So obviously the pace was strong enough for him to be happy to sit there for a few laps. And then obviously when Pidcock attacked, he jumped off and he left me, but it was a good ride for us. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And then, we're on the call now because you tore it up in Tabor this weekend, taking the under-23 World Cup victory. That had to have been a massive moment for you in your very young career.
Yeah, it was pretty special. I've always dreamed of winning a race of that level and never really knew when it was going to come or if it was going to come. And it's happened now, and I still can't believe it. The course has just suited me down to the ground, and I knew from the year before that I go well on it. And then that was a big target for us this season, so it's completed.
Yeah, you've had quite a few top tens in the Euro champs, also in the World Cup in Bern.
Yeah.
You won the national trophy in Derby earlier in the year. What are your goals for the year?
Next one's probably going to be Zolder, I think, the World Cup, and then obviously World Champs in February.
Excellent, man. Excellent. You're riding for the Tartaletto Easter egg squad. What's your setup like? Does your family travel with you? Do you have a team over there? We know, the English speakers, Belgium's a totally different thing.
Yeah, no, I'm based in Belgium pretty much all winter. I'm living with a friend, Belgian guy. This is the first time this week I've travelled back to the UK just for a bit of a refresh and a restart before we go into the main block of the Christmas races, and it's just nice to come home and see the family.
Right home, for sure. And what is your next race coming up?
World Cup Cockside on this Sunday.
All right, then. That won't be that too far. You'll take the Euro tunnel over, I presume, and right back in it.
Yeah. And then back home again.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, we wish you the best of luck, and congratulations on that. It's such a great thing to see. We love seeing, some non-Belgian riders really making the international side of this sport what it is. So we look forward to catching up with you again, and we thank you so much for your time on the show.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Yeah, great interviews. It's nice to start hearing from these guys, isn't it? As they start to sort of make their way in the sport, and he did a great ride in Coxsider as well. Just missed out on the podium, came home in fourth, and really, really bright future.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always great to be able to see a non-Belgian or Dutch rider fighting it out in the front. I try for this podcast to really focus on riders that are English speaking. There's so much content already in Dutch and in Flemish and stuff like that. But to see a rider that's speaking English, that's coming from a place that's not Belgium or the Netherlands, having success in the international scene is very unique. We want to be able to give as much credit to these riders and shine as we absolutely can. So it's fantastic to not only get to know Thomas, but to be able to follow his season, which is, just the beginning of a very, what I presume to be successful career. So let's talk about Coxside, Marty. That was a heck of a race. You got to call it for GCN and GCN Racing.
It was one of those days where I kind of came out of the commentary box and had to have a lie down afterwards and go and sit in a dark room. It was just absolutely phenomenal day's racing. If you look at the courses, Koppenberg, Coxside are probably up there as my two favourites, and the women's race again was so close. And I'm a huge fan of Lucinda Brand, always have been, and it was just that front group that was just swapping backwards and forwards. Inga van der Heijden, Yara Castellijn, Annemarie Verse, Celine Del Carmen Alvarado, and that lead between Alvarado and Brand was just swapping backwards and forwards. And the women's race just came down to the minutest of details in the end. Alvarado managing to ride a sand section. Lucinda Brand didn't. Alvarado opened a little gap. Brand went down on the next corner, and it was just, absolutely phenomenal. And great to see Celine Del Carmen Alvarado get that first World Cup victory.
Yeah, man, I can't imagine the emotion and the elation that goes into that. I mean, it was a very special post-race quote, and I'm going to read that to you here, Marty. It was, "My passion to win was bigger than my tiredness," and she said it very flowery and fun. That tells us everything, doesn't it?
It's such a good quote, isn't it? And if you got to look at it and you think, if you can win like that and the legs and the tiredness is not quite there, then, respect for that. And we love commentating when we see riders coming through. And I remember commentating on Sana Kant's first World Cup victory and saying at the beginning of that season, this rider's going to get a breakthrough victory very soon. And we've seen it this year. And I think we're in such a privileged position, you and I, getting to call these races. Yara Castellijn, Annemarie Verse, Celine Del Carmen Alvarado. It's really, really special.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many different World Cup winners. Magali Rochette, Katarina Nash, Annemarie Worst, and now Celine Del Carmen Alvarado. And the racing's just been so compelling and fun to be able to watch. It was like you said in the women's race, it just came down to the absolute last wire. And then, Lucinda Brand had one mistake and then another mistake. You could just tell everyone was on the limit, and it was a fantastic race to watch. There was no way I was moving from my seat. I loved being able to be a fan of that one. And then there was Van Der Poel and Tim Merlier and all of the drama that happened in the men's race there.
I think that's one of those moments when you just look at that and you're like, we are not worthy. It was that first corner, Kleppe and Merlier going down. Merlier looked like he properly whacked himself as well. And Van Der Poel was delayed. And you look at that and you look at the course, and he was back in the 30s. It was like 37th, 38th place, something like that. And you're like, we might, maybe give him 3 laps, 4 laps, maybe to get to the front. He gets to the end of the first lap and he's on the front. It was just watching the technique in the sand. And you know what it's like riding that course.
Yeah.
The running, the leg speed on the running, it was just so complete. It was just an absolute joy to watch. It was an absolute masterclass for him to come through and take that victory. And then ride of the day, you've got to say as well, Tim Merlier, he was, from quotes, 35 seconds down off the back rider. He needed a new bike. He picked himself up and he powered and he finished 9th. He was in a great battle with Tom Pidcock as well. And for me, that was one of the rides of the day, was Tim Merlier.
For sure. Both of them had fantastic days out there. There's no excuse for a bad start position. There were quite a few pieces on the internet, people talking about these rides. And yeah, I mean, I think that for me, looking at this ride this weekend from Van Der Poel in particular, his skills on the bike are at such a different level. We're not just talking about power. We're not just talking about like cardiovascular strength. We're talking about finesse, technique, maturity, patience, so many things that make a great rider. His ability to come back from that adversity and not freak out and also just show how strong he is. I think these types of tracks really put that on full display. And for me, I just realized that you are absolutely watching someone that's in so many ways in the top of their game. It's hard to believe that like things came together for this person to be created that can do this type of thing on a bike. It sounds very like, oh man, we're just going with the superlatives here, but it's such a feat. Like the entertainment of that race happened in the first 20 minutes, and it was his ability to do that show. And then he did an encore for 40 minutes, but the race was truly over after 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah, totally. And we do come in for a bit of criticism from some people that go on about the Mathieu Van Der Poel like super fans, but you know what? It's so well deserved. And I'll hold my hands up and say, I don't care. I love the guy. I think he's awesome.
I will wrap it there today, Marty. I want to say thank you so much for your time. It was an excellent week of racing. What do we have coming up this week?
Well, we love a new course in cyclocross, and your good friend Erwin Vervecken knows how to put a new course together. So we've got what they're calling the Urban Cross in Kortrijk. So we've got that live on GCN Racing, and that's DVV Trophy. So that's live worldwide, just excluding Belgium and the Netherlands. So make sure you join us. We go live at 12:30 UK time, which is 1:30 CET, and then we have both races live. Bit of halftime entertainment, usually featuring yourself and some how-tos. So make sure everyone subscribe to GCN Racing. Make sure you get on board with that one. It does help us as well.
Yeah, if you haven't yet, it's youtube.com/GCN Racing. And we would love it if you'd subscribe to that as well. One of the things that we've been talking about at GCN, we want to get those subscriptions up so that we can get more live racing going for you all. Cool, Marty. I'm looking forward to chatting with you on the weekend and commentating in Kortrijk. And thank you so much again for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I would like to welcome my friend Erwin Vervecken to the show. Erwin, how are you today?
I'm fine. I've been a bit sick this past week, but I'm fully recovered and I'm back in business because it's a very busy period, and we have a total of 23 cyclocross races, UCI events in winter, and so it wasn't a good time to be sick.
I can imagine. It always stinks to be sick. So I want to catch up with you because I know you got a very tight schedule today, but I want to get a check-in with you on how you see things going right now. There's a lot of action happening on the men's and women's side. We're fully properly in the middle of the cross season. I wanted to pick your brain on a couple things, but let's just really quickly check in on your thoughts on the men's side. We're seeing Van Der Poel coming in, but being challenged by Iserbyt. It's been really challenging for him, I think, to win these races. Obviously, he's had a lot going on with his family and so on, but I'd love to have your opinion of what's going on there and what your opinion is so far.
Well, indeed, we have seen Mathieu coming back in Ruddervoorde with a win, and in the meantime, he won all his races. But it wasn't so easy as I thought it would have been. Okay for the first event because all the rest is already racing for more than a month, so he jumps in the middle of the season. But then, Europeans the week afterwards wasn't an easy win, and then also this past weekend, of course, with death of his grandfather, it must have been a huge impact on him. But still, we see that Iserbyt is very good. Also, a couple of others are really going well. So I don't know if it's Mathieu who doesn't reach yet the level of last year. I presume he will be better in the next few weeks. We also saw in Hamme on Sunday that if he has the good legs, that he can win with a minute ahead. But Mathieu stays Mathieu. Even in maybe in a not super condition, he can still win every race he races.
Right. How about Iserbyt? I mean, he's coming on so strong, and he's been really challenging Van Der Poel. Do you think that Iserbyt will continue to go in an upward trajectory? And was the European Championships maybe a sign of things to come?
Well, he's super strong this season. He's very motivated. If you see his interviews before and after the different races, he feels confident to be able to beat Mathieu, where we saw last year Toon Aerts and Wout van Aert. Well, in their different interviews, you never heard them speaking about, okay, next week we'll beat Mathieu. Iserbyt is very confident that he can win one day, and he's super strong. He's a real cross racer. He's technically very good, and maybe one day he can beat Mathieu this season.
That's awesome. Yeah, we don't understand the Dutch interviews, so that's fantastic to hear that he's saying that. I had no idea. Okay, and how about on the women's side? The Dutch are obviously continuing domination right now, but the thoughts on Sanne Caan? I have a feeling that she's playing this year almost perfectly, obviously coming in, but the races that she would need to focus on, the national championships, the world championships, she's just getting into form, and she's starting to show herself at the front. She's probably still involved in all of the classifications. So what is your opinion there?
Well, Sanne had also a difficult start last season. It's not the first time that she's struggling to get a good shape early in the season. But still, she won nationals last year. She won world championships last year. And she still won most of the big races in the second half of the season. This year, the ladies from 777, so Annemarie Worst and Jara Castellan, seem to be very strong. They are both very young, especially Castellan. She's just coming, so it's hard to say if she can keep that level for the rest of the season. And Sanne, she's slightly coming back. She was second on Sunday, also on Saturday with a start from, I think, third or fourth row. Her season is for sure not lost. It's not her best season yet, but also last year she had struggled to get in good shape. And she's getting towards her 30s, so she's almost 30. And she's already there for probably 10, 12 seasons. And what we usually see is that riders who are getting older have more trouble getting in good shape early in the season. But once they are in good shape, and the important period to come, December and especially January, that's still the most important period of the season. So, nothing has been lost for her.
So I want to also ask you about the attendance numbers, because I've been hearing that the viewing figures and the attendance numbers for cyclocross has continued to grow this season, which is exciting for everybody.
Well, especially in the women's categories. We saw in Niel on the 11th of November, for the first time in Belgian television history, that there were more viewers watching the women's race compared to the men's race. So that's good. They have been growing steadily, and the women 4 or 5 years ago, when there was for the first time live women on television, we saw these numbers were probably 60-70% of the men's live numbers of viewers, and they have been growing and growing, and at this moment it's probably an average of 90%. But in Niel we saw for the first time more people watching the women's race than the men's race. So it's a good evolution. It means that also women's races are attractive, and also the stars are born there. So 5 years ago, people didn't know all the women riding in front of the race. Nowadays, they have become famous, and people watch both races.
All right, Erwin, I'm going to leave it there for today. I want to thank you again for your time so much and all of your insight.
Okay, thanks a lot.
It's always great to be able to catch up with Erwin. I enjoy his insights, his passion, and perspective on what's happening in the world of cyclocross, which brings us to today's featured guest, that is Toon Aerts. Now, if you're not familiar with his name, Toon is Belgian. He's 26 years old, and he is the leader of Sven Nys' Telenet Baloise team. Toon's consistently been battling for the wins week in and week out over the last couple of seasons, last year famously winning the first World Cup of his career at Trek headquarters, his sponsor, in Waterloo, Wisconsin. It's a pleasure to be able to welcome Toon to the podcast. I'm here with Toon Aerts.
Hey, Jeremy, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks, man. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you. This is an interview that I've really wanted to do because you have been tearing it up on the circuit. In 2016, you were the European champion in France. Last year, you famously won the Belgian championships against Wout van Aert. And last year, you also were the overall World Cup winner. You must be feeling like you're on top of the world at 26 years old.
Yes, indeed. It was the last years every time a little better. Every season was going better and better and up in the rankings, like we had the UCI ranking. So for me, it was, it was nice to see a few weeks ago that I was on number one in the UCI ranking. Together with the jersey from the World Cup last season, the Belgian championships, and the Europeans from 2016. I think I had a nice list on my career so far.
So I would like to back up because I think a lot of people that are listening have never had a chance to listen to something with you in English. So I want to make sure that I back up and I want to hear from you a little bit about how you got into the sport of cycling in general. Obviously, being Belgian, I know it's very much in the newspapers and everything, but you and your brother are pro riders. You guys have had a lot of success. So I'd love to hear about how you got into it and your history in the sport so far.
Yeah, it's not that I was competitive already when I was a young guy. I started doing cyclocross or cycling as a competition sport only at my age of, I think, 15, 16 years old. A lot of Belgian and Flemish guys start doing cyclocross when they are around 12. But I was, since I was a young child, I was already riding my BMX and mountain bike in our garden at our home. We had sort of a BMX track with some, also with some mud, but also with some dirt jumps and things like that. And I was all the time playing with my brother on the bike when we had holidays and when we are at home and don't have school. But when I get older, I want to do races and to show not only to my friends and family that I was good on the bike, but also to the rest of Flanders and to the rest of the people. But my parents were not that happy with that. They want to be not every week again on a race somewhere in Flanders or in Europe. So they say, you can race in Holland, not far from our home, every week. It was a competition, the West-Brabantse Veldrit competitie, it was called. And it was a competition from 12 weeks. And they say if you can win one race, then you can start racing in Belgium. In the category Nieuweling, it's just under the juniors. So I started at the 12-week competition and I won one race. But it was also in that competition that I was meeting Mathieu Van Der Poel for the first time. So I directly know that it was a big talent and a big, strong guy. But I can start racing in Belgium, so I was happy with that.
That's amazing. Yeah, you didn't even know it, but you knew that Van Der Poel was something when you saw it for the first time. That's wild. And you guys have been racing against each other for a while, because when I looked back at your results before we got on the line, and I noticed that you didn't travel much. Outside of Belgium, almost all of your races were within, I would say, a couple hours, definitely driving. And it looks like the first time you came to the United States wasn't until there was a World Cup and you were a pro rider. Is that right?
Yeah, it's true. It's also one reason because I wasn't the biggest talent and didn't win much races in the arts categories. Even I didn't win one UCI cyclocross race before I getting pro. So that's one of the reasons that I always raced in my neighborhood and in Flanders and a little bit in Holland, but not that much. And also because I'm just living in the area of cyclocross around the Christmas period. You have the races from Loenhout, which is only 10k away from my home. And at the end of the season, we had also Hoogstraten, Lille and Oostmalle, which is also close to my where I stay. And that's maybe the biggest reason why I didn't race that much outside of Belgium, only with the World Cup. So
we talk a lot about it here in the United States, about the amount of travel that the younger riders have to do. They have to go all over the country to be able to race head to head against each other. And that's something that Belgium really has above us. Really, you guys are just able to drive potentially an hour or less to be able to race against the best riders in the world week in and week out. It's definitely, it's something to actually commend. It's really cool that you guys are able to have so much competition so close.
Yeah, it's true. And also, as young guys, we are always able to race on the same track as the pros, the big guns from that time. I remember the races close to home when we didn't need a far trip back to home after the race. Then we keep looking and watching to the pros and to the women's to see how they do it, and that's also something where a lot of young riders can learn a lot from.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a rider in particular that you looked up to? Because you're in Belgium, you're in the capital. I have to imagine that you grew up just like I did, watching Sven Nys, although you're much closer to him in age than I am, and Bart Wellens and Erwin Vervecken, all of these superstars of cyclocross. Was that something that you saw on TV as a young kid growing up?
Yes, indeed. We looked every race on the television, and after the race we tried to imitate them, also in our home garden. And I remember my brother often played, or he was doing that. He was Sven Nys, and I was in that time Tom van Oppe. And we raced against each other. And we also have to let each other win sometimes. And if Tom van Oppe was before Sven, then I must be before Thijs. And we played that way. It was just a game and not a real race that we're doing.
That's awesome. Let's talk about Thijs a little bit, because when we ran into each other at the Trek Cup, for anyone that doesn't know, before the World Cup, there's a Category 2 race that happens on Trek's ground. It's the warm-up race, but it's still a really big race because there's a lot of riders there from all over the world racing and taking a shot. We were chatting a little bit about about the sun shining. It was a nice day. It was really pretty out. But the thing that I thought was cool is that you were out there cheering your brother on.
Yeah, indeed. He's racing. Also the category 2 race in Iowa, and I was there also as a supporter for him and as giving him some good advice during the race, and also in Waterloo when we see each other. And for me it's also special to when I'm not racing and he is, that I can help him, and also that I can see what he's doing. We train a lot together often. Also today we played a little bit in the sand together, so we are helping each other with a lot of things, but we also need each other to train well. So we're always there for each other.
Yeah, and I know that your family comes to the races with you. Someone told me that your dad is one of the mechanics that helps you week in, week out. Is that true?
Yeah, indeed. My dad is the head of the mechanics, I would say. And then we have some uncles, the brothers of my dad and the brother of my mother. They're also always in the pit zone doing great work, and every Sunday and every weekend is sort of a family trip for us.
Something that Sven Nys told me earlier in the summer that I've mentioned on several podcasts is just that how much of a family sport that cyclocross actually is. And I have been in it for a long time, and I knew always that there were a lot of family involved, but I don't think I realized the depth just about every rider has with their family being involved in the sport. It's almost a prerequisite.
Yeah, and it starts at a young age already. The first years we raced as junior, only my mother and dad goes with us to the races. But then when me and Tess racing together in the under 23 category with only one guy, you're nothing when you have two riders in one race. And then another uncle also wants to be in the team, and in that way we have now almost the whole family helping us to gain some good results.
You last year won both of the World Cups in Iowa and at Trek. How was that, and how did that feel to win in front of your sponsors at Trek? That had to have been one of the greatest moments of your career. Obviously, a lot of accolades in there, but that had to have been super, super cool.
Yeah, for sure. The first World Cup, it was this year we had first Iowa and then Waterloo, but last year we had first in Waterloo the World Cup. It was really nice to do it in that way, and it's maybe one of the biggest victories of my career after the Europeans and the Belgians.
After the Trek races, I was just curious to know how hard it is, because I did a lot of this where you go to Belgium, you do a race like Koksijde or Namur or Zolder. They're some of the hardest races of the year and the season for us. You finish up on Sunday Sunday, and then on Monday it's boom in the plane and you're flying back across the Atlantic Ocean. You had said something along the lines of like every bone in my body is sore from this race, and I just would love to know about what that felt like for you. I think it's never easy, but it's definitely not the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning thinking about how painful that is.
For us, it's not a normal trip that we do. I think you guys have some good plannings and some strategies to use when you do such a trip from US to Europe. But for us, is only in September that we do it, and for the rest of the year, we just go to the races. But it's definitely hard, and I really understand that for the US guys, it's a very hard trip to do that. Also in winter times, coming such a long trip to Europe to race a World Cups.
I feel like my personal opinion is that I've flip-flopped. Originally, I think the internationalization of the sport was very important, and I still think it's very important. But realistically and logistically, with the amount that we race as riders, or I used to race, and that you are currently racing, it's really, really hard to be able to go from even this weekend, for example, right? You guys raced in Tabor and then you had to shoot back to race in Hama. That seems like it's an overextension, to be honest. What do you think?
It's also a very hard trip. We raced and we tried to go as fast as possible again on the road with the camper. We slept for a few hours. And at 7 o'clock, we started our engine again to be on time in Hama. And you don't recover well, and you have to race in Hama again on a high level, and that's really hard.
I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you what it's like working with Sven Nys. I noticed that you have signed with Telenet for a couple more years with the Lions. When does your contract officially end? I know you just did an extension.
Yes, the extension goes in from now January, and then it's for 3 years. So I was very happy with the team at the end of last season. I had some good results, so we talked to each other and we can find a solution and an agreement against the team and myself to go with each other for 3 more years. It's very nice for me to stay in the environment since I was an under 23 rider, and to grow with the same people, which I know very well in the time. So it's nice for me to stay in that team.
It seems like it's just a perfect fit for you guys. I think you and Sven probably hit it off really well.
Yes, indeed. The thing is that I was racing as a junior and I didn't get some very good results. I only raced a few World Cups and that was it. But then I can come to the team when Sven was still riding, to Sven's team, Landau Credit KDL it was called. Sven was on one of his best years at the moment. It was the year, I think, when he was riding the Louisville World Championships. For me, that was very nice when you're a guy of 17, 18 years old and you can race in the same team as Sven Nys. I learned a lot then. But then the team stopped with the under 23 category and I go to Telenet Videa. In that time it was with Hans van Kastre and Danny de Bie and Chris Wouters. But then after a few years when Sven was on his retirement, he sold the team Telenet Videa, and we worked together not as teammates anymore, but now as a manager and team director and rider, and that is another way of working together, but also a nice way to do it with Sven.
What is it like working with Sven? I think he's very involved in probably giving you advice, critique, saying, hey, we need to think about this, or potentially adding this into your training program. Does Sven Nys train you? Do you have your own trainer? Just be curious about like how intense is that relationship, and how much do you work with Sven to improve your overall cyclocross program and technique? All of those things I'm curious about.
I have 2 types of things that I learned and have on and used from Sven. I think as a young rider in the under 23 category, Sven was really somebody who taught me a lot about training, also about technique, how to ride ascent and the descents and things like that. And also the first years when I was a pro, it was a lot of such things that Sven taught to me, how I have to train the day before a race, what I have to do the day after a race, what I have to do in summer and in the Christmas period with a lot of races. But since I was the European champion, also the press and the media came closer to me, and they asked me for interviews, for things like that, photo shoots and such stuff. And it's not always on the right moment that they want to talk to me. And that's also something Sven learned me, how to handle those guys and how to go in a good and positive way with the press and the media. So those 2 things are the things that I learned from Sven Nys, and it's nice to share it, to have that I can use his experience for years.
Absolutely, yeah. I was in Baal at the Sven Nys Cycling Center, and we were doing a day with him as he taught a bunch of young riders a lot of technique and skills, and yeah, just brought the Sven Nys energy to the day. He toured me around his facility, and in the museum, there was a picture of you, and he said, "This is my guy."
Like, yeah, I saw it on YouTube, indeed.
What do you think about when you saw him say that?
Yeah, for me it's nice. Sven Nys is not just a cyclocross racer who's retired and is now leading a team. It's Sven Nys. I mean, you look back at his palmarès, I think there's nobody with such a lot of races won. And for me, it's nice to see that and to have the respect from such a great athlete and person. And it gives me also a good feeling and some strength.
That's worth it for any reason. I mean, hanging out with Sven seems like that would be a no-brainer for anybody, but for you to be able to work with him so close, it's tip of the hat to you. It's fantastic. I wanted to talk a little bit about your road season this year. You were 4th overall at the Tour of Belgium, and you won the mountains classification at the Tour of Wallonie. You're also 2nd overall at the Flèche de Soute, and you won the mountains classification. You had a pretty good year on the road.
Yeah, indeed. I always try to be good in July. We have then the national championships time trial and the normal road national championships, and that was the plan also this year, but for one reason, and we couldn't find it, what's the exact reason, maybe because I did a little bit too much in April and in May, that the championships were not that good this year. But yeah, right before the championships, we have the Baloise Belgium Tour, and that was maybe one of the biggest achievements on the road for me so far, that I became 4th in that race. I was also strong at the stage in the Ardennes where we had to climb a lot. The time trial was good, not super good, but was good. So for a stage race from 5 days, being 4th, after some big guns with Victor Kampenaerts, Remco Evenepoel and guys like that, it's nice for me.
It was a great result. Yeah, you were racing against some of the best riders. It was awesome to see that, and it was live, so we were able to follow it a bit. A lot of riders that you're racing against have ambitions for the road. I was talking to Quinten Hermans, your teammate at the moment, but that he's going to be switching over and focusing a little bit more on road this coming year. Tim Merlier, Wout van Aert, Mathieu Van Der Poel, everybody has had a lot of success on the road. Is it something that you get excited about, or are you fully invested in cross? It sounds like I know the answer, but I'd love to hear your opinion.
Sometimes after the season, when we had our off season and we start training again, in April, that's the big time for then is the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix and all the races, which are very nice. And I think for a cyclocross racer with a good endurance, that there are races that are maybe possible to ride a good result. And then I'm always thinking, maybe one time I want to do those races because they're really nice and important also in Belgium and Flanders. But when I do again a few races on the road, like we had the pro kermesses here in Belgium a lot, then I'm always hungry again to go in the forest with my cyclocross bike. It's not that I hate road cycling, but I just like cyclocross more than I do the roads.
I wanted to talk 1 minute about your maturity, like the way that you hold yourself, the way that you conduct yourself, the way that your interviews come across, and the things that you're able to do, the patience that you've shown to be able to win the classifications, the patience that you show in the race. When I watch you race, one of the things that we notice is that your last 15 minutes of your race essentially has been your trademark stamp, at least from what I see. And I would like to know about it, if that is something that you find like, yeah, I'm able to hold a really high level, but I have 15 minutes where I can really dig in and go all out.
Yeah, I think it's my type of racing a little bit. When you see Mathieu Van Der Poel doing his first laps, or most of the time, his first 2-3 laps are so fast that everyone is blowing his engine. But all those guys came to me after half race, and in the fourth quarter I took them back and ride away from them, I think. And it's because it's my way of racing, but it's also maybe a way of training. I trained a lot of endurance trainings, and I think my endurance helps me to have a good last part of the race every time.
Is that your favorite way to train, is long? You do more volume than some of the other riders?
I do a lot of volume. Also in winter times I plan some weeks, like for example, We go to Spain to do a little bit more endurance because it's not possible with the cold weather in Belgium. But also in summer I try to train a lot of hours, but also some more intensively training. But I think for me to be on top in the general classifications, you need to be as good as possible from September till February, and then you just need to be to have a good baseline and a good endurance base. And in that way, I train a lot of hours, and not always on a high speed or with a lot of watts, but just slowly and going for hours on a day. And when you have the right mix from endurance and more intensive workouts, I think that's what a good cyclocrosser needs.
It's never one size fits all, is it? It's so much different for each rider. So it's cool to hear that you do a lot of hours.
You see it with my brother also. My brother is more an explosive type of cyclist. His first quarter is always better than his other laps in the race. So, but he trains also a lot of endurance, but he's better when he needs to do some sprints and more intensive workouts. So a good trainer finds the perfect way for every cyclist to train.
That's right. A couple of quick questions. What are your goals for the rest of the season?
I started with the season within my mind to gain at least one general classification. I had some problems in Gieten on the Super Prestige wedstrijd and now also in Hamme. But on the Super Prestige, I'm back in first position together with Laurens Week now. So I hope to battle against Laurens and the other guys and to be on top of the Super Prestige on the last stage in Middelkerke. But we'll see. I think the World Cup, to win it, it's going to be very difficult because Eli has some good results with 3 victories and now also a second place in Tabor. But I never give up. There are still 5 races to go, so we'll see at the end of January and in February what the classifications bring. That's the main goal for me.
What about the Belgian National Championships? Where is the track this year, and is it something that suits you and something that you'll look forward to?
Now this year it's in Antwerp. A few years ago when I was still a junior rider, we also raced the Belgian Championships in Antwerp. And there was Niels Albert, I think, the Belgian champion. So it's not a track that suits me perfect. It's very fast with a lot of sand, but not the most technical sand. But because of the high speed and the sand, you need to be a specialist in that way, especially because it's in the championship. It's never easy to win a championship. So yeah, the World Championships suits me better than the Belgian Championships this year.
So you'll look forward to the World Championships this year?
Yeah, of course. It's in Switzerland, so it's always a nice country with the cowbells and things like that to race.
Your career goals. What are the things that you absolutely feel like to die happy that you have to complete?
My highest goal, but I think it's very high. I don't know if I even can reach it one time. But in cyclocross, for the moment, you have 6 things you can win. You have the Belgian Championship, you have the European Championship, the World Championship, and then the 3 classifications. Now, in my career, I won the Belgian Championships, the Europeans, and the World Cup classification. So I have 3 things to do. The Super Prestige classification, the DVV Verzekeringen Trofee classification, and the World Championships. So 3 of 6 done. 3 to go.
Oh man, that's awesome. Toon, I want to say thank you so much for the chat here today. I think everybody's going to really appreciate getting to learn about you, getting to hear your voice, getting to understand where you come from. It's a pleasure watching you race, man, and we wish you all a ton of success for the rest of the season.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed episode 6. It was a blast being able to catch up with Toon Aerts. I feel like every time we put together an episode right now that I'm learning something new about the cyclocross scene in the community that I didn't know before. So please, if you guys are enjoying the episodes as much as I am, share this with your friends. It would mean the world to me. Helps us keep the momentum of the show going strong and getting new people to take a listen that haven't been able to listen to it yet. I look forward to the next time, and I thank you guys all again for your time.